Well, hello everyone. We are live, and I am joined tonight by my friend Matt Nye. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, David. Nice to be on your show.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, um, and hope you all had a wonderful holiday, whatever you may celebrate or may not celebrate.
Yeah. How was your Christmas, David?
It was all right. The typical Jewish Christmas of a movie, but instead of Chinese food, we all went out to Denny's instead.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, last year my family went to Golden Corral for Thanksgiving anyway.
Oh yeah, I went to Golden Corral for Thanksgiving last year as well.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to do it.
How long did you have to wait?
Oh, it was probably at least a good hour's wait.
Yeah. Yeah, ours, the ones we went to in, actually, you said you live in Maryland, right?
Yes.
It was in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm originally from the Maryland area. I was born in West Virginia.
Okay.
I lived in Rockville, Gaithersburg, kind of on and off in my younger years, and then when I was 12, we moved to Pennsylvania. But Hagerstown's not far away, and that was the closest Golden Corral to us. So we went there, and yeah, we waited quite a while ourselves, but I guess we just got lazy last year. We didn't want to cook.
Yeah, and this year we just ordered out from Bob Evans and took it home.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, but Bob Evans is really good. When I worked at a warehouse last year, I volunteered at one of the plants in West Virginia, and they had Bob Evans for everybody as a way of saying thank you for like 3 days in a row. So their breakfast is really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I like Bob Evans. Haven't been there. That was probably the first time I've been there in a long time, but everything was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say their breakfast is one of the better ones I've had, if not the best. I've had some good breakfast tacos at different places because I live in Texas now, so
Very nice.
They're huge down here.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So what do you think so far of the debate between Nephilim Free and who is that? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that person. Amy.
I'm not familiar with that person either. I honestly haven't been watching it just because of the complete and utter train wreck that is Nephilim Free. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think from what I've seen so far from Nephilim Free, and I guess maybe I'm kind of new to the circles that you guys that you're typically involved with, and some of the live streams you typically have. But it seems like at least with Nephilim Free is like he only talks about the evidence, and I think that's okay to talk about what evidence supports this or that. But I think like when I brought up epistemology, I think that's a worthwhile discussion of having too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Philosophical conversations, but when these debates they're only about evidence, I think I don't know. For me, because I've heard it so much, it kind of gets boring very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I like the good philosophical debates. Though I'm pretty much all my debates have been pretty heavily focused on evidence, except for maybe like one or two debates.
Right. Did you and Matt Slick have like a philosophical? I can't remember. Actually, I didn't watch the whole debate.
Yeah, it was kind of more philosophical, mostly about tag and presuppositionalism and stuff like that.
Okay, presuppositional. That's more what I would identify as if I had to identify as something. I mean, to be honest with you, I have books on the evidence that supports the creation side of things. I had actually last year I went to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. I'm sure you're familiar with Ken Ham.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm quite familiar with him.
Yeah, I actually met him, and I don't have. Somebody took a picture of me with him, and my cell phone battery was dead. So I asked them to take it for me and send it to me through a text message, and they said they did, but they never got it. But I do have a signed copy of Ken Ham's book. I shook his hand, and he signed sign that for me.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a nice guy. I'm not sure if you saw his conversation with Bill Nye.
Oh yeah, I'm quite familiar with it, and I've listened to a dozen, probably at least one or two commentaries on that debate. I think
Nice.
I think King Crocoduck has the best commentary on that debate.
Who is it again?
King Crocoduck.
King Crocoduck. Okay, I'll have to
He,
look him
he, he, he pretty much rips Cunningham to shreds.
up.
But
Did you watch the yeah, the debate was pretty well, had a lot of views. Did you watch the when Kenham invited Bill Nye to tour the Ark and they're walking around?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Okay. Yeah, Bill Nye got really upset. I mean, he held his composure, but you could tell he was upset. Like he really didn't agree with the Ark and everything. And
Yeah,
uh,
I guess it'll be like a creationist going through the Museum of Natural History and seeing all the stuff about human evolution and all of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, Bill Nye questioning him on a lot of things. Like there's one part in the arc where they talk about the Lost Squadron. I'm sure you've heard Kent Hovind talk about that, and
Oh yeah,
it's yeah. I mean, I've heard. I didn't just hear that from Ken Ham. I heard that Ken Hovind talk about that years ago, like a decade ago, and so yeah, Bill Nye kind of challenged him on the layers of the ice, and of course Ken Ham said those layers can. It doesn't necessarily mean seasons. It just means when it got cold and then when it got warm, which I agree with.
yeah.
Not sure how you view that, but I mean, yeah, I mean the fact is that the airplane sank. What was it, 70, 80 years ago? Sank, is that the right word? Barrett was buried. So, but there was so many layers of ice that it couldn't possibly represent the seasons alone. But yeah, that was one of the things they covered when they walked through the ark, and there's a few other ones. But yeah, obviously, I mean, I believe Bill Nye is a very intelligent man, and no, I don't think any creationist in their right mind is saying he's stupid or doesn't know a lot. But it's just
Yeah,
that one thing we disagree on.
yeah. I pretty much grew up watching his stuff. I like
Oh yeah,
I like Bill Nye a lot.
yeah, yeah. I did too as a kid. His Bill Nye the Science Guy show, and I got made fun of a lot in science class when the science teacher would start playing that in the intro.
Yeah,
And, like the whole class would look at me and just kind of laugh.
yeah.
Yeah, but what do you think? What do you think this debate? And I would imagine you're more familiar with Nephilim Free than I am. What do you think that he's going to talk about in the debate?
I honestly don't know, nor do I really care that much. But probably talk about geology, origins of life, that type of stuff. Now, I have not been listening to his debate, so I really don't know. But that's the type of stuff he usually brings up.
Yeah, I do recall him bringing up the geologic arguments when with his debate with Jordan.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty
Um,
decent debate.
yeah, that's the only one in recent memory I remember him doing.
Yeah,
But like I said, I know of him from like 10 years ago. I know back in like 2010 he started gaining some traction, I guess, but I probably over the past like 8 years I haven't really followed the um like the online debates on evolution and creation.
yeah,
And I guess I just been busy with work and like things in life, but now because of the pandemic, I'm finding myself on the computer a lot more, obviously. So
yeah. Same here.
yeah. Oh, by the way, how's your you? I know you had mentioned a few times your potential acceptance into University of Colorado. How is that going?
It's going well. I'm still waiting for a definitive yes or no, but it looks like it is going to be a yes. That being said, my backup plan would be UMBC, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I actually did get my acceptance letter to UMBC. So
Oh, nice. Congratulations. Wow. Well, that says a lot because, I mean, me myself, I don't even think I'm smart enough to go to university or college, but I think it's a little bit too late for me anyway. I have a lot of years invested in the career I'm in now, so
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't really have a desire to, but
yeah, I understand.
yeah.
So anyway, I guess we could talk a little bit about evolution and creation or whatever if you are interested. Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, what line of evidence would convince you of evolution? Just out of curiosity.
So I think like I've said in another video is that when I think of evolution, um, I accept that there are variations. Um, and I guess I know we can get hung up on like the word kind, species, family.
Right.
I would say that this is kind of a lengthy answer. I'm going to answer your question. So I would say that there is debate on the definition of what species is, even amongst
Oh, of
uh,
course.
scientists. So I think that kind of presents a problem in itself in answering it when we use those words like species or family. But so I guess I'll just give you an example. Like I believe obviously um, I think it's safe to say we can see a common ancestor, or we can expect a common ancestor between like modern, house cats, um, foxes, or not foxes. That's the dog kind. um, lions, tigers, uh, cougars, all that, and the same with foxes, wolves, coyotes, and domesticated dogs. I mean,
Right.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem saying there's a common biological ancestor amongst those, but I have a problem with the idea that there's a common ancestor, biologically speaking, of between chimpanzees and humans.
Okay. Well,
So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Like,
yeah, yeah.
what was your question again? The
Uh,
original question.
your Russell Francis is what lines of evidence would compel you for evolution? That being
Yeah.
said,
So
let's leave humans out of it for a moment.
okay.
Would you say that chimps and bonobos share a common ancestor?
Yeah, sure. I don't have a
Okay.
problem with that.
What about orangutans? Do they share a common ancestor? Okay,
I would
and
say now I'm not an expert in primates, but yeah, I would say I tend to believe that yes, that's pretty fair.
okay, and would it be fair to maybe bring in gorillas as well?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so let's just I'm going to do this. They are of course in very much distinct genuses as well. But let's go up the ladder a little bit and talk about like monkeys and stuff like that. Do you think maybe lemurs, monkeys, and all share a common ancestor with the great apes, such as chimpanzees and bonobos? Do you think they could have a common ancestor?
Yeah, it's very possible. Yes.
Okay, so when we say that, I guess what precludes humans from having a common ancestor with them as well? Because humans are primates, and we are by definition apes.
Um. Well, I would say those definitions are given by humans
Of
for
course.
one. Um. But I do see that the way the Bible, since the Bible is my ultimate authority, I would say that the Bible defines things oftentimes different than the way humans,
Right.
like we today, would define things. Um, so I guess, do I need to give you an example, or would you accept that as an answer?
I guess if you could give me an example, that would be a good idea. I think I know what you're talking about. Like I think bats being birds and whales being fish in the Bible's classification.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, I don't see. I know some
Yeah.
skeptics hammer on these points, saying, "Haha, see, the Bible is wrong." Well, I find that to be a
Yeah.
terrible argument myself because the Bible's classification is very different from the Linnaean classification that we have today. The Hebrew word, when it calls about bats being birds. is better translated as flying creatures. So bats are quote unquote birds because they are flying creatures. So all this stuff that can fly are lumped together as birds or flying creatures, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and to me, that's not an error in the Bible. I want to hammer that point, saying that, aha, that's an error.
Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you. Now I don't regard Ken Hovind as the best source for, like, I would, if I had to suggest a creation ministry, I would point people mostly to Answers in Genesis. But I was first introduced to the creationist arguments years ago by Ken Hovind.
Right.
Have you watched his seminars, like the whole thing, or do you just kind of have a surface level knowledge of him?
I actually debated him a couple times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I discussed radiometric dating, evolution in the flood, and a couple other things, couple other topics with him.
Okay. I'm not sure what all you covered, but there was a seminar he did. It's like a 2 hour. Obviously, most of the seminars are like 2 hours long, but he did one specifically on called "Lies in the Textbooks." Have you seen that one?
I've heard
Did
it,
he do any of that? Did he talk about any of that in his debate with you?
No, not that I recall, but I am familiar with some of his arguments in that regard. I have not listened to that entire thing, but I know a couple of examples that he uses with the Hill's embryos and a couple other things.
Yeah, the gill slits with the embryos.
Yeah.
And well, another one, I've listened to that seminar, and I've also listened to, he talked a lot about it too when he did, he went to the University of California, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Was the University of California? It was in California. It was, he basically, he debated the whole class. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen
None
it.
of the professors would debate him, so he just went and did his presentation.
Yeah, I've seen part of that. I have not watched the whole thing. But one thing that really stuck out to me, let me pull this up.
Okay.
If I can even find it. It's definitely on Popular 54's channel. He's a creationist. So let's see if this works. This is the one that he is talking. Let's see here if this is the correct one. But anyway, he basically is talking about kinds, and he kind of does a subtle shifts at the goalpost where he says kinds are anything that could any kinds or stuff, organisms, species that can interbreed, and then he shifts the goalpost to say that they are creatures and organisms that could originally interbreed.
Yeah,
a little bit of a subtle goalpost shifting, which I find deeply problematic. Because how can you tell if two organisms, two species, could originally interbreed? What criteria is there for that?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, his whole point was that evolution shouldn't be taught in schools because there's a measure of faith that's required in order to accept that humans did indeed come from or share a common ancestor with chimpanzees. And I think also, if I remember correctly, he brought up the vestigial organs, and I know, like I was saying, the Lies in the Textbooks seminar, he brought a lot of the same arguments up in that classroom debate with it was Berkeley. It was UCal Berkeley is what it was.
Okay.
And
I've seen the video, but I have not watched the entire thing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you're interested. I mean, there's lots of stuff to watch, so I mean, it's up to you if you want to. I'm not trying to force you to. Obviously, I can't, but if you find that kind of thing interesting, like I said, I know Ken Hovind's not the best example of, because of some of the things he's at least been accused of. I don't know all the facts, but yeah, I would definitely, I'd put Ken Ham. If I had to recommend somebody, I'd recommend Ken Ham over Kent Hovind. But I do think there was a lot of discussions Kent Hovind had, interactions he's had with like classrooms like that. He had another one in a paleontology class. I think it was in North Carolina. I want to say no, it was Florida and Pensacola. And of course, the people in the class disagreed with him. So I think both sides are fairly represented in those videos. So if you're interested, I recommend those. But
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm actually getting ready to debate Bill Morgan on evolution versus creation. What is the better explanation? Some things that I'm kind of working on. I'm also reworking my arguments on human evolution as well, specifically. Of course, you know that evolution is a theory on what it is a theory on the biodiversity of life.
Okay, yeah.
So right, like we're gonna make a hypothesis. Our observation is the biodiversity. The question is, what is the best explanation for this biodiversity? And my hypothesis would be evolution. That genetic change over time eventually results in new species, which, as a result, all of life shares a common ancestor. And through there, we can actually make specific predictions. And again, talking about human evolution specifically, I'm going to make a hypothesis that humans originally that humans originally appeared in Africa. That is my hypothesis. Now, what predictions can be made from that hypothesis?
What prediction will be made from the hypothesis that life started in Africa?
No, that humans originated in Africa.
Oh, that humans originated in Africa. Enlighten me.
So right, so if humans originated in Africa and spread outward, where would the majority? Where would be the greatest? Trying to word this question. Where would we find the greatest genetic diversity if humans originated in Africa?
The greatest genetic diversity.
Yeah.
Well, first I would say, to the best of my knowledge, it was basically, wasn't that around like Eastern Africa? So not exactly like. I think I know where you're getting here, so I'll answer your question. You're going to say Africa, right?
Right, and this is due to what's called the founder effects. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, so this is a thing in genetics. Let me pull up a diagram here. I like this diagram. Chrome tab, founder effects. So right here, not sure how well you can see this, but you see you have the original population, the parent population, and what happens? A small group migrates, taking some of the genetic diversity with it, and the population after a couple of generations will have fewer genetic variation than the parent population due to the founder effects. This is also pretty good. So the mother population here stays put. So we have a founder effect where a group of members of the population move outwards, and they lose some of the original genetic diversity, and that is why. That is why, if my hypothesis is correct, the greatest amount of genetic diversity would be found in Africa instead of elsewhere.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. So yeah, like I do understand that the secularist interpretation of the origin, at least of the beginnings of human, was in the sub-Saharan African. Was that
Yeah,
East Africa?
Yeah, somewhere in that region.
And the at least a lot of, obviously I can't say everybody, but a lot of folks in the creation science community, I guess I'll call it, is that well, I mean, really, according to the Bible, is that it was in the what is now present day Iraq, Iran.
Yeah.
That's where Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden were.
Right.
And they've done basically like DNA whatever tracing, and basically it's pretty well agreed on in that region there amongst secularists and Christians that that's where the first human beings began.
Yeah, lots of problems with that, but chief among them, would you at least agree that the greatest genetic diversity is found in Africa?
It's I'm not an expert on it, but yeah, it seems to be the case.
All right. Yeah, and that is one of the biggest clues that leads us to believe, genetically speaking, that humans originated in Africa. That plus the incredible wealth of hominin fossils in Africa, um, and among many other things, all compel us to view the humans evolving originally in Africa.
Now, so I definitely agree that there's when I say evolution, I mean microevolution. There's variations within kinds. So you talked about the genetic diversity from correct me if I'm wrong, but the parent ancestor of a species or kind or family of animal, and you I forget exactly what you said, but from what I understand is that there's a decrease in the genetic genetic diversity over time. Is there a decrease? Is what you're saying from the parent?
So yeah, what I'm basically saying is that we can map out the migration of human migration simply just by looking at genetics, and what we find, okay, migration map. Let me pull this up, and this is what we find. Yeah, this is what we see when we do a map of human genetics, and we can trace back our lineage into Africa. So we have the starting population in Africa, slowly diverging outwards. And this is exactly what we would expect if humans actually did emerge in Africa.
Okay. Something came to my mind. I don't know how far I can go with you in that conversation because that's not my area of expertise so much.
Right.
But something came to my mind is like, when we look at all of the languages on Earth, and I mean, if humans did evolve biologically from lesser, primates, and we look at all the languages on the Earth, all these languages we have that I don't know what the secularist what the timeline is as far as the dating, how old languages are and what was the first language. But according to my worldview, is that 6,000 to 10,000 years ago we had one language, which most likely was Hebrew or Aramaic, depending on who you ask. And then came the flood, the Tower of Babel. And at the Tower of Babel, we see God. He confounded the languages of the people building the tower, and they spread out because they couldn't communicate. So those who were able to understand each other, obviously gathered with each other and went out, continued civilization within their own language group. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is my question is, what is the secularist explanation for all of these different languages, and not only just that, but the languages, we see groups of languages that are so drastically different from one another. When you look at languages of like Chinese, Mandarin,
Right.
the Asian languages, they are so drastically different than the Germanic languages,
Right.
or the Romantic languages, or Romance languages, whatever. Does that make sense? Does my question make sense, or is I just?
Yeah, let me if I could, I'm going to share something with you real quick.
Okay.
So this is how Old English actually sounded. This is the original quote-unquote English language. I'm not sure. Have you ever heard Beowulf in the original English, in the Old English language?
No, I haven't, but I have heard some older English from like the 1500s, 1600s.
Yeah, and I think that is actually not Old English. That is more
Oh,
modern English. This is actually what Old English sounded like.
okay.
And yes, this is actually is English.
Okay.
Hwatwe gardena in jardagum, feud kuninga krymje prunon, hutha edelinga sellen fremedon. Oft shield shaving sheldena fratum, monigum maithum mel de eras, sithan arift where thou shalt fund.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's actually Old English. Believe it or not, that is actually English. We do not speak like that today, obviously. Um, but the point that I'm making is that English, the languages change over time, the same way biological organisms do, through quote unquote mutation, through natural selection. Basically, what happens is that humans we don't pronounce we change the pronunciation of words and change the definition of words and add new words to the dictionaries and stuff like that. And over time, these changes result in new languages, and we can see that where Latin became Italian, Spanish, etc. And we can see that when when the I think it was Dutch, some of them moved over to South Africa, and that's where modern day language Afrikaans came from. So that's exactly what we see in in evolution. That these genetic changes over millions of years result in radically new species, and the same thing happens in language.
To me, in a naturalistic worldview, the concept of a language even this would be my prediction. If we did evolve and I had a naturalistic worldview, I would expect there to be maybe like 2 or 3 languages at the most, because and really I find hard to believe there would be even more than one, because it wouldn't be beneficial to have more than one language. If like
Well,
would it make evolutionary sense just to have one language? I mean,
well, if I could respond to that, even within the past 100 years or so, we can see how language has been completely changed and altered just in a short 400-year period. Um, let me pull up. Let me see here. Um, Here we go. Here's Genesis chapter 1. This is the King James Bible 1611. Not sure how you can. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this, but you can see how just in 400 years, how different English is from what it was in 1611.
right.
And you can see, if I was a English teacher, I would be getting my red pen out and saying, "Okay, this is not right. This is not right either." But it's almost unintelligible in certain places. John 6:16. John 3:16. For so God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever. Right. So the point that I'm trying to make is that languages change over time through mutations, through subtle change in pronunciation and definitions. And so that's what we would expect under natural even under naturalism, that's exactly what we would expect. That isolated groups develop their own culture, they've developed their own words and languages, and that's exactly what we would expect.
But I mean, for the ways that animals and they, I know you would consider us animals, but and when we think of animals like other than humans, you look at the verbal communications that they use, you don't really see much of a difference. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it just seems odd to me that in a naturalistic worldview, we would have, I think, what is there, over 10,000 languages and dialects in the world. To me, that's that. I mean, that just it makes more sense that from the Bible's explanation of there being a Tower of Babel and
Yeah.
all the historical.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not too familiar with animals and their languages and stuff like that, but I do know that animals such as chimpanzees and all can and do communicate. Chimpanzees and bonobos, I think, have like your own unique warning calls for different predators.
Oh, right.
That being said, I'm not sure how different they are from one another and if they change at all. Bird songs can be very accurate. I'm just reading from Wikipedia, just looking at a couple of things, but yeah. This is also another way that language new species can form. With the bird, such as with bird songs, that their bird vocalizations change a little bit, and that could also lead to reproductive isolation and eventually form new bird species.
But yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, like to be quite honest with you, there's nothing you could actually show me to convince me that we evolved from chimpanzee, or I don't know what the actual official. I think you understand what I mean, though. Chimpanzees or gorillas, or basically share a common ancestor. I guess it depends on who you ask, because I've heard Richard Dawkins say, there's a misconception about evolution is that we evolved from chimpanzees, and that
right.
Basically chimpanzees are a modern version. They're an evolved version of what was billions of years ago, and we're modern versions of what was billions of years ago, and so on. But to me, I just in general, I just say chimpanzees. That's what I commonly hear.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely correct on that. Humans did not evolve from modern day chimpanzees. That is, we do have a common ancestor, but we did not evolve from chimpanzees.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, for what do you believe that humans evolved from?
Not quite.
How would you explain it?
So basically, from what I understand, I'm not quite sure exactly what the last common ancestor between humans and chimpanzees would be. Possibly an Australopithecine. Let me look something up real quick.
Okay.
Humans and chimpanzees, just seeing humanoids. Common ancestors, so maybe given here. So it's probably something like an Australopithecine, something like that. Maybe a species that we haven't yet discovered. Let's see here.
Take your time. I'm looking something up myself.
Yeah. Let's see here. What's up? Yeah, it's probably let's see here. The last common ancestor. We don't. Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly what the last common ancestor was, but that is definitely something interesting to research.
Yeah. But I guess let's use the example of like I guess it's commonly accepted that canines and felines are the closest related families. Would you accept that, or am I off on that?
I guess you could say that.
So
I'm not.
in order for me to be convinced of I guess you'd have to show like where does the actual I guess what's commonly called the missing link. But I don't think it's possible to even produce that for various reasons, which would probably take a while to cover.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like missing links, so far all the supposed missing links, like Lucy and all these other, what were the other one? Piltdown Man, and a few others. I've heard, I can't recall offhand what they were, but I heard very convincing arguments that these are totally ludicrous and not to be accepted. And that was in a recent movie I watched. Actually, it was Genesis. It was about Genesis by Eric Hovind. They talked about the supposed missing links.
Wait a sec. Let me pull this up.
But for me personally, it comes down more to the fact that Christianity is it is a faith. I mean, you do take it by faith, and I have taken it by faith, and after that, I have experienced God myself. So I know experience isn't the standard of truth, but for me personally, it is. I mean, my experience confirms what I put my faith in as the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So my experience has to do with my relationship with God. It'd be silly if it'd be like if I asked you, what evidence would it take for me to show you that your father or your mother wasn't real? Because like you likely talked to them recently. But for me, like I have conversations with the Lord every day. So even though I don't see him, like my relationship is just as real as my relationship with anyone else. So that's really the reason why I would say that there's nothing you could show me to prove to me that. And I understand. Sorry if I'm going different directions.
That's not a problem.
I'm jumping around everywhere, but basically, I understand that there are Christians that accept that that God used evolution to bring us here, and I don't accept that. I believe what the Bible says as far as the way I interpret it, of course. But I just like I said, I told you in the past that I used to be an atheist, and yes, I mean maybe not as long as you've been. I'm not sure, but I grew up in a religious household myself, and I turned into I would say kind of back and forth between agnostic and atheist. And there was times I for sure called myself an atheist, and I even used to argue against creation on the internet, and I spent hours just explaining why I believed evolution was the truth. But it sounds like you're a lot more learned in these things than I am. So it sounds like you've definitely, I mean, you've debated Ken Hovind, you debated Matt Slick, so you know a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But did you have something to show me?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were looking something up, but I would really recommend watching those Ken Hovind conversations in the classrooms.
Yeah.
Because both sides are represented equally, I think, and also he actually shows from these textbooks a lot of over the years what has been used to quote unquote prove evolution has been disproven. I mean, things have been disproven before I was even born in the 80s, and they're still in textbooks today. I mean, I think that's a problem. I think that the fact that there's inaccuracies in textbooks that are still being taught to kids, regardless of what you end up believing.
I think part of the problem is simply no, I haven't seen a middle school textbook in years, but part of the problem being is that many of the high school, middle school level textbooks kind of try and dumb things down for middle schoolers to be able to understand it.
Yeah.
And another problem being some of these textbooks are very much out of date simply because they haven't been replaced due to a lack of funding. So that's part of the problem that I see. That being said, I'll have to actually read a textbook, like a middle school textbook, just to see what it actually says.
Well, yeah, I guess I would have to. But I know Ken Hovind made the claim that he's a collector of those things, and he's got probably hundreds, if not thousands, of them. Or he can point that out. But
Yep. Anyway, I do have to work tomorrow morning, so hopefully we can maybe do a part 2 and chat a little bit later as well. I really enjoyed our conversation. We've been going for almost 50 minutes now.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm not as knowledgeable as you are in these things. So sorry if the conversation kind of seemed boring, but
I know, it was fascinating.
well, I definitely like to talk about philosophical arguments for the existence of God and epistemological arguments.
Yeah.
Because I think that's more like for me, there's for me, I believe there's evidence to support the Bible and there's evidence to support God, the God of the Bible. But there's things that I can't prove with evidence or can't even support with evidence. I mean, I can give evidence that a man was in the belly of a whale for 3 days, or that Jesus. I can't prove you that Jesus is God.
Right.
So,
But there is, of course, pretty good evidence that a person was not alive in the belly of a fish for 3 days. Chief among them being the physical and biological impossibility of it. But I digress.
I got you.
Of
All
course.
right, David. Well, it was nice talking to you.
All right, yeah, you too. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. Bye.